What we're going to do is we're going to explore the ideas of long-term effects of drought and how do we go about the process of planning for drought recovery. So let's take a clear look. Where are we today on the 9th of January in 2014? Has the drought broken, or are we facing another year of some level of drought? How do we make these management decisions when we don't know where we are or where we are going? Well, perhaps we should start by looking at where we have been so we can help figure out where we are today. I know a rancher who has precipitation records to show that he has had drought 8 of the last 11 years. Ouch. Drought with 75% or less of long-term cumulative average precipitation happens in my area in northeast Colorado about half of the time. For this guy, it's happened a whole lot more often. But one thing's for sure, when the cactus gets shrunken, you know you've reached dry. But precipitation is only part of the story. We have to go out and look at our range. We have to see what is happening on the ground. But what do we look at? Well, we can start with the infamous fence line contrast and determine if our neighbors wasted grass this year or not. The only difference from one side of the fence to the other in this picture is how the pasture was grazed. The soils are the same on both sides. The potential grass plants are the same on both sides of the fence. There are times when we can get a pretty darn good idea of what's out there, or maybe what's not out there, just by driving by at 65 miles an hour. We can tell that this pasture has been overgrazed. But no matter what happens in 2014 precipitation-wise, this pasture is going to experience drought. However, if we really want to know what's going on out there, 99% of the time we need to stop the pickup, get out, and walk around. Take a yardstick and either sharpen it a bit to a point, or you can tie a big staple to it so it'll hold it up. Then take your camera too, or a cell phone that you know how to download the pictures off of. Now we're walking, remember? We're not driving around, we're not on a four-wheeler, we're on foot. But even on foot, we need to be careful not to make our assessments based on looking across the range. Here's a piece of range that looks pretty good on the 31st of May, particularly considering at this point, this area was sitting at about 31% precipitation deficit for the year, after ending at about 50% of the average deficit from the previous year. Most of the green you see here is needle and thread, with a little western wheat and some blue grama. Now here's the same piece of ground looking down. It's a different view, isn't it? You can see my pickup key there kind of on the upper left-hand side. We know what we want is, if we want to know what's happening on our range, we have to look down. But what are we going to look for? Well, how about if we start with how much grass is really out there? Roy Roth, CSU Extension Range Specialist, once made the point to me that cows don't eat acres, they eat grass. It doesn't matter how many acres you have, it matters how much grass you have. So how much grass do we really have here? No, I don't have my sharpened stick or a big staple, but I used my pickup key out here in the middle. You can see the white tag on it. Looking across this pasture, we can see there is quite a bit of green. And green means grass, right? If it's green, it's growing, right? If it's growing, we better put some cows out on it, right? I'm very sorry to say that green does not translate into growing. Green equals photosynthesizing, not necessarily growing. And green is not always something to eat. Sometimes it's an indicator that things are drastically wrong. Here on the 14th of November, the green is none other than our good friend cheatgrass, or downy brome. Yes, cheatgrass is tasty, but at 2 inches, it's not forage any more than your shag carpet is. Otherwise, we can see there are some blue grama seed heads, giving the impression that there is some cover out there. But looking down, we see just how much grass cover there is. We also get a much clearer picture of what kinds of grass make up this cover, which is the second thing we need to look at while we're looking down at our pastures. It's not so important that you know all the names of the plants, but you do need to know which ones are tasty and when they are tasty and which ones are not tasty, ever. Blue grama is tasty pretty much year-round, but it isn't exactly hogging up all the soil space, is it? And where are the other sand grasses that should be out here? Now this pasture obviously isn't in stellar condition on the 17th of May, but what do you think? If we let it set for a month until mid-June, we should be able to put some cows out there, right? I promise this is the same location we were just looking across. If you said, yeah, another month will be good, do you still think so? How much grass cover is out here? This is the same 3-inch pickup key I've been using, so we're looking at an area that's about 9 square feet. Remember, I said the first thing we're going to note is how much grass is out there, because cows don't eat acres, Cows eat grass. The second thing we need to look at is what kind of grass is out there. Notice these plants in the bottom right-hand corner, the ones that are pulled out. What are they? This is 6 weeks fescue, or some people call it June grass or spit-out grass. That's because that's what exactly cows do when they get it in their mouths. They spit it out along with everything else in their mouths. Sometimes something that gets spit out is not going to feed a cow or anyone else. The next feature to note is what else is or is not on the ground. The most important of these are dead grass plants, bare ground, and litter. Now, even in the best of conditions, there's plants that die every year. And droughts like those that we've had for the last 2 to 12 years, depending on where you are, those plant losses are even higher. Dead plants won't grow leaves no matter how much rain you pour on them. Now, dead plants are easy to find in the summer, at least in summers that turn green. The dead plants are the ones that aren't green. You can see several in this picture. When living grasses are dormant, whether winter or summer, they have a tan color to them. Dead grasses have a black or a dark gray color to them. Here's a good close-up, down-looking photo. You can see the tan leaves with a little hint of red. These are the living plants. But what about these black ones with the short little leaves? These are dead. They may send up a new bud, but the old plants, they're done. They are not going to turn green. They might send up a new little bud, but the plant themselves is dead. The green plants you see here are 6 weeks fescue, or that spit-out grass. Now on this yardstick, about half of the plants along this 9-inch length are dead. Now, obviously 9 inches is not a good measure when you have acres and acres. You need to look at numerous areas and estimate how much of the plant cover is living versus dead. Remember, acres don't feed cows. Grass feeds cows. The next characteristic to note is bare ground. Bare ground is a great way to learn that there are a bunch of critters living on your rangeland that don't have hooves at all. There's tracks of no less than 5 different animals in this photo. And while this is certainly interesting and intriguing, I don't recommend maintaining bare ground so you can track the 2-ounce grazers on your property. But look what else this photo tells you. Look at the ridges. Look at the holes. This is significant soil movement. Even the weeds cannot grow when the ground is moving under their feet. If weeds can't grow, we know that grasses won't grow. Bare ground also gives a place for seed germination and recruitment. Now this is good if you want to get some better species started, and bad if you have annuals or other undesirable plants on your fence line looking for new territory. Just like crop ground, bare range ground heats up faster, evaporates more moisture, soaks in water slower, and is more likely to wash or blow than ground that is covered. The hotter the ground is, the less friendly it is to roots or to the microorganisms living in the soil. Active microorganisms release nutrients. Nutrients feed plants. Once these little microorganisms die or go into survival mode, it takes some time for them to reactivate. Litter protects the soil from wind and water erosion. It keeps the soil cooler, so the water that soaks in the soil stays longer. This improves living conditions for the root systems and the microorganisms. The more litter cover we have, the faster our range will recover. Most of the ground here is covered with plant litter. The grasses are needle and thread, western wheatgrass, and blue grama, all perennial plants that we want. We don't see any cheatgrass or 6 weeks fescue, spit-out grass, stuff we don't want. This pasture is in a great position to withstand continued drought and to really recover once a favorable precipitation pattern returns. Remember, acres don't feed cows. Grass feeds cows. If we only consider what's going on above ground, we're just getting half of the story. If our information is not balanced, then our decisions will not be balanced either. The most important thing to consider is what we can't readily see, the roots. Plants are like icebergs. What we see is only a small part of the whole. And, as the captain of the Titanic learned, it's how we manage around what we can't see that will determine our fate. Roots are remarkable beings, beautiful and worthy of our admiration. Roots are a vital supply line of moisture and minerals. They are more than sheer depth, 7 feet here on the left, and about 9 feet on the right where the man is standing. Look at the miles and miles of fine roots on the right. The roots are so dense you can't even see through the mass. The plants here are all native tallgrass prairie species, primarily compass plant, Maximilian sunflower, and big bluestem. If your rangeland plants have roots like these, there's not a drop of water they won't find. But maybe, more importantly, in droughts like this one, there's a lot of material that can be burned off for energy to keep the plant alive. Plants replace about 30% of their roots every year, just like we replace our skin cells regularly. To replace roots, the plants must be healthy, with a full array of leaves, actively capturing sunlight energy and changing that light energy into carbohydrates and sugars for growth and food storage. When leaf volume is reduced, either due to overgrazing or drought, root growth and replacement is reduced. If enough of the leaves are lost, root growth is stopped, simply because the plant can't make enough energy to grow any roots. In fact, the plant may start using the root system to survive. Smaller root systems lead to plants that are less capable of recovering from drought or grazing. Think of it this way. Most of us have done hard physical work. Look at this Olympic swimmer here. Can't you just feel his exhaustion? He's totally spent. The look on his face is the grass plant at this point in the drought. The kind of conditioning this swimmer has been doing is no different than the conditioning the range needs to prepare for and survive the next drought. The better conditioned our rangeland it is, and the faster it will recover. Now if you look at the end of this arrow, you can see a white line and a pink spot. That's my yardstick with a ball of flagging at the end. Now, many of our pastures have had a really hard workout, even if we didn't graze them at all. If we grazed them during the drought or left them short before the drought hit, then they've had multiple hard workouts. With each workout, the plants have had to use valuable energy to recover. This energy storage is in the buds, which is what grows into new plants and in the roots. And many of the plants in this pasture are so spent that they're like the swimmer we just saw. How many of them are just hanging on the lane marker? This rangeland has been hurt as bad as if it had a fire. Even with good slow moisture, it's going to take at least 2 years for this overgrazed pasture to be ready to even think about feeding a cow. We might say, but we had good moisture last fall, and many of us did, and you can see that in this news article. But look at the variability. 1.42 inches at the airport, 2.29 inches in Dodge City, and look, just a couple miles south in Forage County, why they had nearly 6 inches of rain. Rain begets grass. Your place needs to have its own rain gauge. We cannot anticipate grass growth if we don't know how much it's rained. Certainly, these are the best fall conditions the grass has had in a few years. And if the pasture was fortunate to be in good health despite the drought, like this one, the plants really exploded with seed heads in response to the rain. It's reasonable to expect that the grasses were able to pack some last-minute energy storage both into buds that can grow into new shoots next year, and maybe even into roots. However, it was too late in the season for there to be any substantial root growth for overgrazed pastures like this one. Moisture cannot bring the dead to life. So, is the drought broken? Do wetter times await us? Or will we see another year or more of dry weather? You know what? At this point, for 2014 management planning purposes, it just doesn't matter. Every grazing decision we make should be set against these questions. If I do X, will it help me to increase the number of new plants? If I take this action, will it leave plants tall enough to capture snow and slow down wind speeds at the surface of the soil? Is this going to increase the amount of litter cover and to decrease the bare ground? Remember, our grasses just went through one or several months or years of really hard work. It's going to take some time for them to recover fully. So how do we do this? As Dwayne mentioned, what about the take half, leave half idea? The problem with this philosophy is that it deceives a person into believing that there's always something for livestock to graze. It gives the impression that there's never a time when cattle should no longer be in the pasture, that there's always something there. If the grass is 12 inches tall, can we take half? Well, maybe, depending on the species, the time of year, and what other cover is out there. But what if the plants are only 2 to 3 inches tall and 2 feet apart? Is it okay to graze that 1 to 1.5 inches? Take half, leave half is a recipe for disaster and drought. The other problem with that take half, leave half is that we don't know what the total is until the end of the growing season. And by then, it's a bit late to determine what the half was we should have taken during the summer. We must properly anticipate how much supply we will have and what the demand will be. The trick is anticipating how much grass is going to grow and then making a plan for the livestock demand that is significantly less than forage supply. Now, there's NRCS, Extension, and quite a few private range consultants out there that can help you determine how much grass you can reasonably expect in 2014. And after you have a reasonable estimation of how much grass to expect to grow this year, then you need to make a playbook with several options. Now I'm guessing most of us like football. We're in the heart of the playoffs now. Like a good football team, you need a playbook that has been well thought out long before you hit the field. This guy, old number 18 here, didn't go onto the field and then create a new play. He might change the play based on the situation at the line of scrimmage, but he did not make a new creation at that moment. The play clock is ticking, and by the time old number 18 calls for the ball, there is very little time left. His decision has to be put in motion before the play clock runs out. If not, there's going to be a penalty. Through years of experience and hours of training, the quarterback has assembled a great deal of knowledge from a variety of sources. And this preparation gives him the ability to adapt in the heat of the moment. Notice how the play in the far right response column is different depending on where they are in the game, the score, and the defense arrangement. Ranchers, your play clock is ticking. A decision has to be made before it runs out. If we don't get the play in motion before the play clock runs out, the penalty we pay is far higher than 5 yards. We may force a change in plant communities, resulting in a lower livestock carrying capacity. This is a huge penalty that will last for years, or maybe even decades. Here's an example ranch playbook, some situation questions. So you ask yourself, how did the pasture finish growing in the last 2 years? How much moisture was in the soil profile at the beginning of the summer or spring, April 15th? How about June 1st? How about July 1st? How much was there August 1st? And then how much standing grass was there on each of these days, the beginning of the grazing season, in the heart of the grazing season? It's critical to know when does the bulk of your annual precipitation come. You can look at long-term averages for your area, but for the most part in this part of the plains, we get most of our moisture by the middle of July. Then look at when does most of your plant growth occur for the grasses on your ranch. You can get grass growth curves from the NRCS or your range consultant or extension person, but for the most part, if you have warm season grasses, most of the plant's growth occurs by the middle of the summer, July 15th. So rain that comes after July 15th is going to result in big seed heads waving high in the breeze, but it's not going to result in leaves and forage for your livestock. Here's some examples of some real ranchers' playbooks. Notice they have trigger dates. Rain begets grass. They have flexibility. These animals go. They stick with the options in the playbook. They aren't making a new one. This kind of planning needs to be done at the kitchen table or in the meeting room with all those affected by the decisions. This is not a heat of the battle project, when the cows are out of grass. We need to deal with the situation now. You decide the indicators you're going to use and then make all the management actions that need to be thought out in the best of your ability now, during the winter, and written down. And tell your ranch where your cows get their sustenance. You have to have at least one full growing season of near average precipitation. The pounds of forage demanded by the animals needs to be substantially less than the expected pounds of forage supply. Remember, acres don't feed cows. Grass feeds cows. No matter how much it rains, plants that are dead will not grow. Water and nutrients beyond where the grass roots are today will not help the grass today. We have to work with what we have. We have to take the time to see where we are by going to all of our pastures. How many of them look like the pasture on the right side of the fence? How many of them look at the pasture on the left? Not just now or at the beginning of the growing season, but throughout the growing season. We're going to keep checking back, not just one of the pastures, all of the pastures. We're going to change our strategy if it's needed as the game progresses, and definitely at halftime if things are not going well. We're not going to wait until the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter to say, maybe we need to do something different. We're going to look down at the ground, not across the pasture. We're going to see how much grass cover we have. Taking a yardstick or ruler is helpful. Make sure you take pictures because we don't remember as well as we think we will. We're going to pay attention to the kinds of grasses we have. Are they yummy or are they yucky? We're going to note the colors of the plants. Are they living plants with a tan color or are they dead in a black or a dark gray? Lastly, we're going to pay attention to how much bare ground and how much litter we have. Summing together all these things that we can see, we can draw pretty reasonable conclusions about the root system, how it's doing, which is the lifeblood of the plants. If the plants are short, it's reasonable to expect that the roots are too. Like good football players preparing for the game, we're going to make a playbook before we hit the field, before spring comes. And we're going to think of all the things the Mother Nature, might throw at us and write down what our response is going to be. We're going to make absolutely sure that we leave enough of the grass that grows this year to feed the root system and replace lost energy storage. Just as an Olympian needs to recover, our grasses also need to recover. This site here was treated properly for drought. And no, I don't have my yardstick, but you can see my key with the white tag on it there in the middle of the photo. This was taken on the 28th of June in a place that has an umbrella over it almost all the time for rain. They're typically short. There's good litter here. Look at the stubble height. See the height of my keys. Look at the good species and plenty of growing season for full recovery. The soil and the plants are armored against another drought year in this pasture. There's a lot of great resources out there to learn more about grazing management. One of them is this one, Skillful Grazing Management on Semi-Arid Land. You can find it at the Nebraska Extension website. Just in the search engine, type Skillful Grazing Management. Don't try to use that EC number or you get some junk. Whether the drought is over or not is not so relevant after all. We must manage our grass to be the best it can under the current conditions because acres don't feed cows, grass feeds cows.